We're leading the forefront with Luca, who's a scoring machine. Kyrie, a scoring machine. Tatum, a scoring machine. Brown could go for 40 at any time. What are your thoughts on this offensive finals we have?
Yeah, I think it's a really intriguing one because even though they are both really high level offenses, they get it done in very different ways. I mean, we see that Mavericks team, like we mentioned, they obviously lean on Luca and Kyrie, but the ways that they do that, Luca is one of the best players in the world, and when he gets you in that pick and roll and he puts you in jail with the defender behind him, you're pretty much at his mercy. And then obviously
Yeah.
we know what it is with Kyrie Irving. He's one of the craftiest players in the entire league. And when he's playing like he was in that Minnesota series, he is one of the best scoring guards in the entire league. They obviously lean on those two guys more than just about anybody. Most teams, like the Celtics, try and be a more balanced attack. They have their two guys at the top, but then they have another three or four guys that can really hurt you as well. The Mavericks, like I mentioned earlier, they're going to need those role guys to step up and hit their 3-point shots. We know what Kyrie and Luka are going to do. They're going to score 50 to 60 points per game, if not more than that. But the other guys are going to have to knock down their shots if they're open. And then another key thing for the Mavericks is the lob. We've seen that a lot throughout the playoffs. They have like 40 more lobs than any other team in the playoffs. Obviously, Gafford and Lively are great at scoring right around the rim. And, Lively, I think he was like 16 for 16 during the conference finals. He didn't miss. One of the few players that have ever done that in a conference finals. And he gets a lot of his stuff on lobs or right at the rim. So that's something key to watch for the Mavericks. And then on the other end, like I mentioned, the Celtics are second in offensive efficiency behind the Pacers. They average like 120.6 points per game, I believe. And that's more of a balanced attack. Brown and Tatum score 25 plus points per game. But then you also have Porzingis, nearly 20 points. Derek White, 15 points per game. Holiday, Al Horford, all those guys can hurt you. Like we talked about earlier, they can hurt you from three, or they are able to get to the rim, draw defenders, kick it out. They can play make pretty much all five guys on the court. Like you mentioned, similar to a couple of those Warriors teams where pretty much everybody out there is a threat. That's kind of what you're going to get from the Celtics. Whereas on the other end, the Mavericks are going to lean on those two guys a lot. So I'm really intrigued by this offensive battle because even though they're both able to kill you and they can both score 120 points per game, it looks a lot different.
So you cut it out a little bit. So guys, sorry for the poor connections on both of our end. We're on the East Coast. It's raining here where I am, and it's been some terrible weather where Chas is as well. So when it comes to this offensive comparison, it comes down to the two dynamic scores, and it comes down to a team overall that has the ability to shoot the lights out at a given time. And so I believe that's what it's going to come down to. I believe it's going to come down to Kyrie and Luca versus the entire Celtics when it comes to the scoring and as far as the offensive firepower that these teams and those two possess. I think it's going to take an overall game for the Celtics. And I know you kind of hinted at that a little bit, that everybody can get you something every 10, 15. Jason Tatum could go for 30. Jalen Brown could go for 35, 40. And then it becomes the other. Porzingis could get you 20 points. Derek White could get you 15, 20 points. So all of the others are contributing to that team. When it comes to the Dallas Mavericks, we maybe see PJ Washington get you 15. We might see the bigs combine and get you 25, 30 points. But most of it's going to be Luka and Kyrie in the upper 30s. And so is that enough to beat Boston? And so that's why I think it's really important that Boston has to come out with a motive and intention that, okay, we know we might not blow this team out, but we need to dominate. We need to dominate the offense and defensive end. Because I believe it's going to come down to when one superstar plays bad, which other superstar can pick up the slack. I believe Dallas. I believe Dallas can play bad and still win. I don't know if Boston can play bad and still beat Dallas. So if Jason Tatum is playing bad, I don't think Jalen Brown 35, 40 is enough. if Luca's got 40 and Kyrie got 15, I believe Dallas could still win the game. So from that perspective, I think one offense is significantly weighed at a higher level than the other because Dallas could score in spurts. I mean, 15, 20, 25 points. They could score sporadically. They score in spurts. Boston is more methodical. Boston is more, in between the lines. It's more of a ground and pound versus Dallas. They just hit you in waves, in droves. And I think it's gonna come down to that. It's gonna come down to which team can withstand one superstar subpar play better. And I believe Dallas can sustain either Luca or Kyrie subpar play better than what Boston can. Because I believe Boston, those two guys have to play. They have to play. And because if they're not, and Dallas is clicking on all cylinders, I don't know how Boston wins.
I'm sorry. I think an important thing with this is that these teams need to stay true to who they are. I think we've
Yeah.
seen a lot of times the Celtics, they play a balanced attack through the first 3.5 quarters, but then those last 5 or 6 minutes, they tend to get stagnant
Yep.
because they start going ISO ball. And when Jason Tatum has the ball late in the game, he tends to not get great shots. It ends up being a tough fall away turnaround or a sidestep 3-point shot. And those aren't great shots. I think when they continue to play like they have been all game, that's what they need to do down the stretch as well. The Mavericks don't really have that issue because they play the same way no matter what point in the game it is. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that's why, like we talked about a lot throughout this podcast, is that if whoever has, if Boston has a lead late in the fourth quarter, they probably got a good shot. If they're the one that are trailing with 3 or 4 minutes left, it's gonna be really hard for them to overcome that. So I think both of these teams, as good as they are offensively, they have to continue to do what makes them successful. And I think Boston is the team that we see they don't always do that.
One word answer I have for you. I have a question. One word answer. In a situation where we've been talking about the fourth quarter clutch, do you trust Boston more down to come back, or do you trust Dallas more down to come back? What I mean by down is if Dallas is down in the fourth quarter, do you trust them to come back more or to come back to win the game more than the Celtics?
Yeah, Dallas, no doubt about it.
Gotcha. All right. That says a lot.
Yeah. I do want to mention one thing that I meant to talk about when we did the keys to the series for the Celtics, but it fits in here as well, is that on the offensive end, I think Boston is going to have to attack Luca a lot. We've seen Luca attack the bigs on the other end, and we're going to see that against Horford and Porzingis. On the other end of the floor, I think Boston is going to have to attack Luca and make him work. We saw that a lot in that first matchup this series, where I'm sorry, the first matchup this season where Jalen Brown continuously got switches where Luca was guarding him, and he took advantage of that all night long. He got in the mid range, and Brown was
Yeah.
able to have a lot of success with Luca defending him. Luca's improved on defense, but he's not a great defender by any means. And if you make him work, that could also slow him down on the other end as well.